I would just like to take this opportunity to thank Phil Housley. I really enjoyed working with Phil over the last couple of years. Phil is a great man. He put a tremendous amount of time and effort into helping this organization. I wish him and his family all the best moving forward. Today certainly wasn't an easy day, but the results in the second half were just not there. We were very inconsistent. Our fans expect more. We expect more. In the end, I thought this decision had to be made for our organization to move forward. We are all responsible for the success and failures of this organization. We are certainly not pleased at where we're at and where our results happen this year. We all need to be accountable and not make excuses. In terms of filling this vacancy, the process has already begun. At this time, I do not have anything else to add about the possible search or candidates. I am happy right now to take your questions. Move forward.
Jason, what was the primary shortcoming in terms of Phil, his style? Obviously, the execution and the results weren't there on the ice, but can you pinpoint what the disconnect was or whatever it was?
Well, I think it's mainly just our results in the second half. I think we had, unfortunately, the same lapses defensively in our structure, and especially when you come back after the All-Star break and playing those tight games and those tight situations, some of those same mistakes were continually showing up. And at the end of the day, this is a result-driven business, and we didn't get the results.
How do you balance that with the fact that you did have a young team this season?
No, and we've talked to it from the start that we were going to be a young team, not just young players, but players in key situations, playing very notable situations. And it's a drain on them in the second half, playing in the league, playing 82 games, something that they're not used to. And I thought our coaching staff worked very hard with those players, trying to, continue their development. But I thought some of the mistakes continue to show up with our young players, but there's also mistakes there from our veteran players.
Jason, when you look at
John here.
as much as and you said there's a lot of blame to go around, and you did have a young team. How does this move reflect on the more veteran core of the team that you have? In its inability perhaps to inspire a better second half? How much does this fall on the players who've been here throughout the frustrating times and failed?
Well, I think whenever you have a coaching change, everyone's trying to pinpoint who's at fault. The coaches need to take some blame, our players need to take some blame, and management needs to take blame. We didn't put the proper roster out there. We didn't give Phil enough players, enough tools to have success out there. I think our players, you saw me last year in my press conference in the year, I was frustrated with sort of our focus and our preparation. I thought our players did take a big step this past year in training. I thought you saw that in the first half of the season. Their preparation, their interaction with our performance staff, their interaction with our coaching staff, they took a step there. Unfortunately, we weren't able to carry that all the way through to the second half, and that was the disappointing thing, that we didn't get those results in the second half.
I know you've mentioned this, and both Terry and Kim have mentioned this as well, in terms of Phil being able to communicate effectively with players in terms of whether it be game plan or system, whatever it was. How much of a disconnect was there in what he was saying and what wasn't getting through to players?
Well, I don't know if you can really quantify what it was. The bottom line is, look at our record. You look at our record in the first 25 games, you look at the record in the last 25 games. Unfortunately, the message wasn't getting through. I thought that both sides, when we first came in 2 years ago, a big thing that we had to try to work on was the communication between players and coaching staff. I think our coaching staff really made an effort to, and I think our young players are certainly interacting with our coaches more, which was nice to see. But at the end of the day, it didn't result with success on the ice.
Jason, two-part question. First of all, you were adamant in Tampa that there was
not going to be a coaching change at that time.
Mm-hmm.
Why did, in hindsight, did you not make a coaching change during the season when the team was clearly going on the skids far before the last 20 to 25 games?
Well, I think the team showed that they can actually have success in the first half, and you saw that. I thought every team goes through ups and downs throughout the year. And you say that even at the time at Tampa Bay, you look at our homestand in the start of February, it wasn't a solid start against Chicago, but I liked our response after that. Even in losing a tough game against Carolina, we then responded well with a game win against Detroit, a tough loss against Winnipeg, good win against Islanders. So to me, there was still results there. And it's going to be the way I manage. I trusted our players. I felt comfortable in our players. I thought this was a new situation for them, and being in games that meant something in February and March. It's why we tried to add to the group with bringing in a player like Brandon Montour. I thought there was a big improvement in our coaching staff from the year before, so I was going to trust him in that situation.
And given what you said a couple minutes ago about the proper roster not being out there, which is clearly a management area, how much did ownership impact this decision from a business standpoint as well?
I guess I would need you to clarify that a little bit.
How much were Terry and Kim involved in firing Phil?
They were not involved in the firing Phil. I had discussions with them about where I was at in my thought process. I made my recommendation this morning to them. They accepted it, and I then obviously had the tough conversation with Phil.
Jason, how much player input was there as far as just feeling them out and then making this decision, and what kind of coach is needed for this group based on the number of coaches we've seen in the last half dozen years?
First off, I did not look for the players' input into this. This was my decision. I'll have interaction with the players, but when it came to making a decision on the coach, that's my decision. In what our coach is going to be moving forward, look, we just had the conversation with Phil earlier today. Randy Sexton, Steve Greel, and myself will talk over the next few days on what exactly our team needs moving forward as a coach. And then we'll look at different candidates from that standpoint.
So John in the back, hang on guys, John in the back.
The hiring of Phil was pretty much universally praised and accepted. Looking back, is there anything that gave you pause that can help you in this search?
You know, you go through the process 2 years ago with the candidates. You hope some of the skills can transfer, but Phil was an assistant coach, and you think some of the things that could transfer over to becoming a head coach. And I think he learned a lot in that first year. Unfortunately, you look around the league, there is a lot of changes at the coaching, and it's tough sort of learning on the job from that element. I think we're still going to be open, though, for what we want in our next coach, and so there's nothing really clearly defined right now from that standpoint.
Adam?
Hi, Jason. You had talked about the roster not being good enough. That obviously is on you.
Yep.
Can you be specific about that, where you think that it came up short?
Well, I think it's imperative for us moving forward that we continue to develop skill, to add skill to our forward group. It was great to see this year the success of Jack Eichel, Sam Reinhart having a career year. After a tough month, it was nice to see Jeff Skinner get that 40th goal, but we relied on them too much. We have to continue to develop our young players in our organization, both in Rochester and Buffalo here. And we also have to continue to look to find depth scoring. And I think the way the games are, especially in the second half, you can't, some of our top players wore down a little bit. We have to have more scoring from different lines. The other element is I just think we still have a lot to improve on defensively. And it's why we went out to get a Brandon Montour. There's things that we need to work on from a structural standpoint defensively, but I still think we need to move pucks out of our D zone quicker and spend less time in our own D zone.
Paul?
Is there still a real chance that you could sign Jeff Skinner? I mean, I know you're not going to get into specifics, but a lot of fans are worried that he's not going to want to sign here. Is there still a real chance that you could?
100%. And both sides have continued to focus on how do we get a deal done. And I can understand where fans are coming from. He's a fun player. He's an energetic player. You love watching Jeff Skinner out there. And I think the relationship for both sides, for the player and for the team, has been a positive one. So that's why we're trying to find a resolution.
That said,
Matt, hold on. Matt, or go ahead.
Bill, first for me.
No, you go.
Okay, so Jason, you said that the coaching search has already began. What are you looking for in a coach? What qualities, what traits do you want to see in the next head coach of Buffalo Sabres?
Those are things I'm not going to talk about too much right now. And the simple fact is I just had a conversation with Phil Housley a couple hours ago.
Bill?
And those are the things that I'll talk to Randy Sexton about and Steve Greeley about and move forward from there.
What's the status of Phil's staff?
The status of Phil's staff is the final decision on will depend on who the next head coach is, and he'll make the decision on whether they're retained or not.
Nick?
you mentioned Jeff and that you believe there's a 100% chance that you can still re-sign him. But in terms of free agents and a guy like Jeff, how do you maybe convince a player and an agent that with all the turmoil and turnover that re-signing here will be a successful move for them in terms of wins and losses with the franchise and potentially contending for a cup versus history repeating itself over again?
Well, I think you just have to look at the start of the year, the first half of the year. You saw what this team could be in the future. And then even in the second half, unfortunately, it was just in glimpses. It was a game here, a period there. But it's evident the skill that we have on our team and the young skill on our team, whether it's Erasmus Dahlin having one of the best 18-year-old years ever for a defenseman in the National Hockey League. Jack Eichel, Sam Reinhart, the development of Casey Middlestat. I think players also realize and saw just the excitement of this city, and whether it was around Thanksgiving and all the way through Christmas, the energy that was in the building, and so I think we have work to be done here. No one's saying that we are a finished product by any means, but I think the hockey world also realizes there's a lot of positive attributes here.
Adam?
Kind of following up on that, and obviously you've been here, Jason, only recently and worked with Phil, but I think you understand the overall context of the number of coaches and the amount of change that's gone on here on ownership's watch, and how disruptive that can be to building something consistent, obviously. How much pressure do you put on yourself to get this decision right, and how critical is it for this franchise at this time?
Well, I think it's critical whenever you're making a coaching hire. And I understand we have some, as I just talked about, we have some very talented young stars on our team. And when I was hired 2 years ago, my job was to create a winner here. Not just get to the playoffs 1 year, but to get to the playoffs on a consistent basis. And it's going to be crucial to find the right coach that can help us through that process.
Mike?
Jason, you talk about how you need more skill at forward, and it's obvious to anybody watching, but you traded an elite two-way center for what turned into spare parts in this season. I mean, how damaging is that? How much remorse, buyer's remorse do you have about that? And how much does that make you take pause in your future dealings with other teams to not make a move like that basically handicaps your team and contributed to firing your coach?
Well, it's a situation that we're always going to look at different things, and we've talked about. We understand moving a player like Ryan O'Reilly or Evander Kane, that you're trading established players for future pieces, and we also don't think that trade's been completed yet. We also think that there's development with young players, there's development with draft picks there that are going to help us in the future. We also think that trade gave us resources and cap space and draft resources to go out and get Jeff Skinner. So there's a compliment there. But, hey, you're always going to learn from different trades. But to say that it's going to impact my ability to make trades no, we're going to continue to make changes. And we're going to continue to make changes to make sure that we get this right.
What's your response to the notion that this team is continually looking to the future over and over and over again and not looking at the present?
Well, you can keep that dialogue going, or you can look at that we've traded for Jeff Skinner, that we traded for Brandon Montour. So, yeah, we've made trades that have talked about the future, but we've also looked at players that are going to help out our team right now. And I'll admit, it's always going to be a balance here. And it's always going to be a balance until we get the right mix.
A few more here. Lance?
Is there any concern that a lack of continuity can negatively impact
player development with younger players? When you look at Darlene, some of the progress he made under Steve Smith, or some of the other guys throughout the season?
No, and then look, I thought Rasmus, as we talked about before, had an outstanding season, and just in so many different, like the fact that he, on our #1 power play, playing against other teams' top players, absolutely amazing season, and it's what gives us so much excitement, having players like Rasmus and players like Jack Eichel have that competitive drive to help bring a winner here to Buffalo. Look, and I thought Steve Smith did a nice job, a very nice job with Rasmus, and we'll see how things progress with the coaching staff here. But the great thing, I think, with the players I talked about and with a lot of our core players is they're looking for knowledge, and they'll take the best what they learn from this coaching staff, and if there's more changes on the staff for the next one, they'll take the best from that next staff. And I think that's what makes them such elite players, is they're always looking for knowledge from our coaching staff, from outside sources, from skill coaches, and that's what makes them so talented.
Okay, John?
Jason, I know fans have been asking me, just how do you balance the duties that you're going to have with the Worlds as the GM, the Canadian Team Canada GM, and this coaching search? If you could outline how that works, if there's any advantages or even disadvantages being in Europe.
Yeah, well, look, the tournament doesn't start till May, so it'll be a situation where all of April will be over here. I will go over on probably 2 different occasions, but we'll be back in Buffalo here for our amateur scouting meetings, which will obviously be very important, and we'll find out Tuesday where we're going to be drafting with our first round pick. But I view it as a big advantage right now, like the communication with other general managers, finding out more information about different players, Canadian players throughout the league, and then just interaction with Hockey Canada on different coaches, not only for this team, but past coaches that have worked with the World Championships, getting feedback from them. So I'm a proud Canadian. I'm certainly going to try to help out Hockey Canada whenever I have the opportunity. And I also think from a personal growth as a general manager, this is a great opportunity.
Paul?
You've been very consistent talking about development with your young players, that you want them to develop in America. You are not going to rush them to the National Hockey League. The only one I guess I don't understand was Tage Thompson. It just seemed like he struggled so much, he really could have used some time in the American Hockey League. Why was he so much different than you've been with all the other prospects, not rushing them and keeping them there?
Well, I think we have been very adamant about building a successful organization. That's why we are very proud of the success of both Rochester and Cincinnati this year. And we talked a lot about it, that we are going to develop players in the American Hockey League and trying to get up. That's the livelihood of our organization moving forward. But we've also talked about making sure that we develop at the National Hockey League level. And if players are going to be here, we're going to develop here. And it's not just, everyone focusing on Tage Thompson and Rasmus Dahlin and Casey Middlestat this year. But it's imperative for us is the Jack Eichels, Sam Reinhart's, Rasmus Ristolainen's continue to develop too. With the situation with Tage Thompson, there was always a dialogue on what would be best for him to go down or stay up. We felt when there was a response, a lot of times through the year when we did feel like it was time to get him sent down, that he had to come back with some very good plays out there on the ice. But it is a situation where we thought about, hey, it is important to get him down to the American Hockey League at the end of the year. And that's something that we talked about him at the deadline. That's why we made sure that he was available to be on the American Hockey League roster. And would we have liked to seen maybe a few more goals from Tage in the National Hockey League and continue that development? Yes. But I think even with some of the couple of games right before he got sent down, against New Jersey there, against Ottawa, he created chances in both those games. So it was there, but it just wasn't finishing that. And that's where we think, hey, getting down to the American Hockey League, getting acclimated with that team, and hopefully being a part of a successful playoff run will be good for setting him up for success next year.
Okay, last one, John.
You mentioned wanting to see the continued development of Rasmus Ristolainen. What did you see from Ristolainen?
Well, I thought especially in the start of the year, when we had success, it was great that, I thought he moved the puck well. You saw the success, and even in overtime. I still remember in Montreal with the big win, and then I think, you saw him jumping up the play and sort of creating some chances and him having fun out there. And he is such an asset on the ice. Just you see it, especially against games, I think against Tampa Bay or against Washington, when he has that responsibility to play against another team's top player or play that physical role, he can be really effective there. And I think, in the last month here or so, he didn't play as well as he had anticipated or wanted to. He was dealing with some illness too, which was a factor. But you look at what we're trying to create with our D-core. It's why we were so adamant about development of Rasmus Dahlin. It's why we went out to get Brandon Montour, is we're trying to build a more, successful D-core, but also more depth on our D-core. And one of the disappointing things for us was just after Brandon was, came to the organization, we didn't have many games over the last month or so of our sort of 6 guys healthy.
Thanks, everyone. We'll see everyone tomorrow.
Thanks, Chief.